Hello and welcome to another TSE single slider. Today we're going to look at webhooks and how to listen to the events you want, both with and without Stripe Connect involved. First, it's important to understand that Stripe accounts generate all kinds of events, and those events are triggered even if you don't have a webhook endpoint set up to listen for them. Some examples are payment intent succeeded, invoice paid, customer updated, and checkout session completed, which are just a few of the many events Stripe accounts can generate. So how can you get notified about the events you care about? Webhooks. We're going to look at some webhook configurations which demonstrate various event flows in order to give you a solid understanding of how you can configure webhook endpoints to receive the events you want, or determine where an event came from. Let's start by looking at a Stripe account. Every Stripe account has a test and live environment which are separate from each other, and it's important to keep track of them independently as we proceed. This account has several events which are being triggered in test mode, and several different events being triggered in live mode. Let's create a webhook endpoint in test mode to listen for some of the test mode events. We'll start by specifying the event types we want to listen for. In this case, payment intent succeeded and invoice paid events. Note that the specific event types don't really matter. For our purposes, it's only important to know that this webhook endpoint is set up to listen to two specific types of events. Next, it's important to call out that this webhook endpoint exists in test mode, so live mode is set to false. This isn't a property we explicitly set on the webhook endpoint itself. Instead, Stripe sets this based on which environment, test or live, the webhook endpoint is created in. Also note this is not a Connect webhook endpoint. We'll be looking at Connect webhook endpoints soon, but for now we're only concerned with this single account and the events it produces. Finally, we're going to set the URL property to the URL where we want to receive the events, which in this case is example.com/hooks1. With this webhook endpoint configuration, some of the events generated by the account will match the events we're listening for, and those events will be sent to the URL specified when they occur. Note that other events exist on the account, but they aren't what we're listening for, so our webhook endpoint ignores them. Also note that listening for all or too many event types puts undue strain on both Stripe systems and the system the webhook endpoint is delivering the events to. Webhook endpoints should always be set up to listen for only the event types needed to make an integration work. Now let's create a webhook endpoint in live mode. We'll listen for the same event types, we're still not doing anything with Connect, and this time we'll send them to a different URL, example.com/hooks2. This webhook endpoint acts very much like the one we have in test mode, but note that even though both our test and live mode webhook endpoints are configured to listen for the same event types, only test mode events are going to the test mode webhook endpoint, and only live mode events are going to the live mode webhook endpoint. This is how webhook endpoints work without Connect involved. If you're not using Connect, as long as you understand the separation between test and live mode, you can stop here. If you are using Connect, or if you're simply curious, let's move on. We're going to need some connected accounts, so let's start with one account connected in test mode and another connected in live mode. Let's take a moment to talk about what a test versus live connection means here. One Stripe account can connect to another in either test or live mode. For example, if a platform account creates a connected account with the API, the resulting account will be connected to the platform in the same environment, test or live, it was created in. You can also connect an existing account using OAuth in either test or live mode. Note that there are specific considerations with account type, connection method, and other details I'm glossing over that are out of scope for this discussion. The important thing to understand is that connected accounts can be connected to a platform in test mode or in live mode. Now that we have a couple of connected accounts, we can see that those connected accounts have their own events. The webhook endpoints we set up earlier are account webhook endpoints, meaning they're going to listen for events from the account they're created on, not connected accounts. In order to receive events from connected accounts, we need to set up a connect webhook endpoint. We're going to listen for those same event types again. Note that we're back in test mode. This time connect is set to true, which indicates we want to listen for events from connected accounts, and we'll set the URL to example.com/hooks3 for this one. Now this webhook endpoint will receive test mode events from connected accounts and send them to the URL we specified. Note the live mode events on this connected account are not being picked up by the Connect webhook endpoint. That makes sense. Test and live mode are separate, so you wouldn't expect to get live mode events with a test mode webhook endpoint. Now let's take a look at live mode. We'll set up another Connect webhook endpoint, listening for the same event types and pointing to a fourth example URL. As you may have guessed, this Connect webhook endpoint will pick up the matching live mode events from the account connected in live mode, which it will then send to the URL specified. But that's not all. This Connect webhook endpoint will also listen for test mode events from accounts connected in live mode. At first glance, this seems counterintuitive. Why would events from test mode on a connected account be sent to a live Connect webhook endpoint? The reason for this behavior is that the platform needs to be able to test things on live connected accounts before actually going live with those accounts. A platform can access both test and live modes on an account connected in only live mode. So if Connect webhook endpoints in live mode didn't receive test events, the platform would have no way to test webhook functionality other than testing in live mode, which is both discouraged and impractical. Another way to think about it is that accounts connected to a platform in live mode can be considered, from the platform's point of view, to be entirely in live mode, including their test environment. In many Connect scenarios, the first step after connecting an account is to provide that account with a test or playground environment so the connected account holder can make sure the platform will work for their needs and ensure everything works before going live. The platform can tell the test and live mode events sent to the Connect webhook endpoint apart because each event has a live mode property that will be set to either true or false depending on which environment it came from, just like the webhook endpoints shown here do. If we didn't allow test mode access to connected accounts via a live mode platform connection, the alternative would be to have accounts connect to the platform in both test and live mode separately. This is not a practical solution. It doesn't make sense to ask people to connect to the platform twice, and the Connect webhook behavior in this scenario becomes quite confusing. With this configuration, test mode events on the connected account will go to the test mode Connect webhook endpoint because the account is connected in test mode. But those same test events will also be sent to the live Connect webhook endpoint along with the live events, because the account is also connected in live mode. This configuration is generally not recommended unless the platform has unusual requirements. Now that we have three connected accounts, note that the Connect webhook endpoint in test mode is receiving events from all the accounts connected in test mode, and the Connect webhook endpoint in live mode is receiving events from all the accounts connected in live mode. Connect webhook endpoints receive events from all connected accounts, not just one. Events sent to a Connect webhook endpoint will have an account parameter which lets the platform see which account each event belongs to. This functionality means platforms only need to create Connect webhook endpoints on their platform instead of creating account webhook endpoints on every individual connected account. In fact, platforms cannot create account webhook endpoints on connected accounts, which is one of the few restrictions a platform has when it comes to operations they can perform on their connected accounts. Also note that all of the webhook endpoints shown here are configured to listen for the same two event types, but each webhook endpoint is receiving events from different places as a result of their configuration and test versus live mode status. To recap, account webhook endpoints listen for events from your own account. Connect webhook endpoints listen for events from all of the accounts connected to yours, and test and live mode are separate with one exception. A live mode Connect webhook endpoint will receive both test and live events from accounts connected in live mode. Understanding the differences between the webhook endpoints shown here is critical when building an integration that depends on webhooks, especially one that involves Connect.